Anyone who's responsible for that death shall not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day. Hundred thousand lives.
Boom.
Rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards on how to open up schools and open up
All
businesses.
right, we
so
should be in there now.
And give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able
Give a
to
second.
do
I got
that.
the sound.
We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
Perfect.
President Trump, I'd like
We're
to
good?
follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking therapeutic, I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Okay.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not
Gravy.
It will be by the end of the year, but I think it has a good chance to companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very
Can
quickly.
you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well, and we have numerous others. And then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you
Right,
because
Palmer.
this is new information.
Well, I
You
sent
have
him an
said
invite.
vaccine is coming soon within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated.
You guys can
Even
hear
then,
the
they say
sound,
the country will be
the debate
wearing
pretty
masks
okay. Right?
into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think the timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and
Ready to
just
launch that.
40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have scientists in the world see it, know it, look at it,
Okay.
go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end it by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and the's no prospect.
What's he mean by a dark winter is what I'm wondering. Like, is he talking, it's going to be.
President Trump, your reaction, he says
I
you
don't
have no
think we're
plan.
going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months.
That's the big
behind
question
me,
is like,
many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal. But it was a total
H1N1's no joke,
Had
y'all.
that had
I
this
got
kind
that,
of
and it almost
numbers,
killed me. It was like 10 years ago.
700,000 people would be dead right now. It's a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic. It was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us
Johnson and Johnson caused
also everything
cancer
that he
from
said
baby
about the
fat.
way every single move that he said we should make. That's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was
I am
way
tired,
behind
y'all.
us.
It's been a long
Vice President
week.
Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 4 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January?
He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry. It's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
Say over soon. I said we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace. He has this thing about living in a basement.
What's happening in Joe Biden's basement? That's what I want to know.
I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous, and you catch it. And I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9% of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though. You have
respond to that.
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, he said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
We're figuring it out.
I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
He said, when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry. It's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. Warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe check bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that. A lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. What Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing. You're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did.
Call him
xenophobic. Xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies
We'll get there.
to handle
He
it.
thought I shouldn't have closed the border. That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about your different
Don't be
strategies for dealing
xenophobic.
with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say, I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their life, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap at his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the net, but there are, look,
Steve's in that.
The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open museums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. They need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools.
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina.
What do you guys think about schools reopening?
They're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested
donut
positive.
debate.
By
And
the
again,
time
the
I spoke
donuts
to the
wasn't
doctor,
insulting to
it
either one of
just
the
went
candidates.
away.
I just thought it was
Young
funny because they looked
people, I
like
guess
him.
it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate.
Open up the state, open up the schools. Is that what you're saying?
Very small. But I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep the country closed.
Do you guys have any friends right now that have lost businesses or
people are losing their jobs? They're committing suicide. There's
or
depression,
lost a life
alcohol,
due to
drugs
depression
at a level that
and in
nobody's
the wake of
seen
all of
before.
the COVID
There's
shutdowns?
abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often.
And I mean, when I say opening
worse
schools
than
back
the
up, I mean
problem
actually like
itself.
students going
And
back
that's
into
what's
class.
happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew them at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open.
I can do that.
But would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business,
Dang,
have
Jeff.
social
Sorry to hear that,
distancing
man.
within the business. You need to have, if you have a
Bobby,
restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can
Jennifer,
take
where are your kids at?
testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected.
Yeah.
You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure they open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no
It is
money.
kind of a ghost town out there, guys. When I was in Chicago, it was wild to be out there and see, like, well, granted, I was out there, well, I was out there all night, 2, 3 in the morning. There was nobody out there. It was really kind of
It's
beautiful but creepy at the
businesses
same
that are
time.
dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at
Vice
what
President
New York has done in terms of putting the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
When you
about
say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. they're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up, and we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems, and we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. Joe says that I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be.
Judy, good job getting out there and voting.
Vice
Appreciate
President
that.
Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
What's your guys' take on masks right now? Is everybody wearing them? And do you feel that it makes a difference about what kind of mask you wear, like what level of filters you got and whatnot, or is
much worse?
Is this okay?
Much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us. Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that in fact his folks to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America.
I guarantee they'd both beat me. A big shout out to people that make donations. That's where I'm at.
Position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Average contribution $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is
Touchy
national
subject, Wall Street
security.
apparently.
And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I asked everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. It's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything about it. I don't think he's stalking them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, his buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything is going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not
Jeff,
get
your wife got
elected
COVID,
the next
huh?
president of the United States
Dang.
because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers
Yeah, I'm
in
still in
Afghanistan,
Kenosha right
when
now.
he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the
Yes.
question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes,
Well,
uninterrupted.
let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and someday you're going to have to explain.
I'm a friendly guy. No one gave me
I never
$3.5
got any
million.
money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, he said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra 130 billion, going to 420 billion dollars a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine.
Yeah, I was
There
going to
is
say, we never heard
nobody
about
tougher
the Stacey, what you're saying about
than Russia
his
than
thoughts on
Trump.
stopping the virus.
And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family. But what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Thank you so much.
Vice President Biden, you may respond.
Yes, sir.
I want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China as a bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever. Number one. Number two, this
Can't
is
do
a
that.
president
Sorry.
I
Let me say
released
it's good.
all of my tax returns. 22 years.
Is that
Go
a
look
not
at
allowed
that.
one?
22 years of my tax
Really?
returns.
To quit?
You have not
You need to say to
released a
quit.
single solitary year of your
I know
tax
what
returns.
you're talking about.
Too
What are you
legit.
hiding? Why are you
To
unwilling?
quit. Gotcha.
Foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your business all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of
I
years.
got a $250 prepaid credit card.
Millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your account
Nobody
tell
told you
when
that.
were
Excuse me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You make $3.5 million, Joe. And your son gave you, they even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know, maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions
I have
about
to
all of this.
respond.
I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you
Man,
count
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit,
deadline for when you're going to release them?
I
to
get
the American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
there are a
don't
lot
know.
of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decided to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions.
that's just
regarding
how you avoid them knocking on your
potential
door.
foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point.
talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why has he been
Can
saying
we just
this
give it up
for
for our
years?
moderator? She's
Show
killing us.
us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So
President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you.
Sure.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong, because
All
the
right.
kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken. I mean, your brother made money in Iraq, millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this.
Let's say what, if my
Vice
brother
President
makes $1
Biden,
million
I
bucks
have
in
been
Iraq, you better
questions
share
about
some
what
with me.
Your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian
saying.
energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath to work for him, said I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing. Number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do, because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not
That
made
sounds
money
amazing.
in terms of this thing about what are
see
you
that up
talking about? China. I have not had, the only guy who made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the word China without
Let
saying
me
China.
ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment,
All right.
and he had no energy.
I'm going to let the vice president come back
100%
quickly, and then I need to get to a question to you. Very
No basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is
Is Joe
for you.
Biden
Since
taking
you took
notes?
office,
Is there like a
you've never
notepad, or is he
divested
just
from
carrying?
You personally promoted your properties abroad.
Say it.
Report
What?
This week,
Said nobody said anything was wrong?
indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which
I'm not
is
a businessman. I'm a
everybody knows about it, is listed.
businessman.
The bank account was in 2013. That's what
Bada,
it was.
you're
It
into
was
it.
open to do. It was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was going to do
Joe's look.
when you're dealing
Like leaned up, started licking his
with
lips.
other people, I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse
I've
me.
got an account at
And
BS.
unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it.
How does that decision
before I
look,
even
guys? Were you like,
ran for president, let alone president? Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up.
thank you. We do need to move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully
We're talking about
transparent in
China.
regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay?
Oh.
And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making
Up,
sure
down,
that in order
up,
to
down.
do business in China, you have all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we were 25%, 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them. Economic, that's the way I will run it. That's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we are president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea. Let's,
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
okay, very quickly, and then we're
Son
going to move
walked
on
out
to
with
North
$1.5
Korea.
billion from China after spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two. Number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy though, what's you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You said you're going to do it.
It's up, down. It just fit. I'm not trying to get shut down by Facebook. Sorry.
Taxpayers' money.
No, the taxpayers. It's called China. China paid $28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it? They
I'm so glad he corrected.
They also paid it out. And you know about the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay,
And now we have a steel
okay,
industry.
President Biden, your response, please.
My response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substance. It's not about
It's a
his
family
life.
thing.
It's about your family. And your family's
You dropped the
fighting back.
malarkey on him.
If you're making
Malarkey.
less than
How do you say
your
malarkey,
middle-class
man?
family, you're getting hurt
Malarkey.
right now. The kitchen table this morning deciding, we
Malarkey?
can't get new tires in the wall because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making.
Not me.
Middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the
PA.
last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
That
to,
is a
I want to
typical
talk about
statement.
North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
1
to
second,
turn to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President,
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing.
Well,
and then
you are politicians, so I suppose it's probably a good statement to use.
When I say that.
Let's talk about
I'm a
North Korea.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I got elected.
Let's talk
Let's
about-
get
He's
off
not
the
a
subject of
typical
China.
politician.
Let's talk around, sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean
Could give him
leaders
that malarkey.
3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next one.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the room. Right
Obama.
He had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what?
Big shout out
It would be a
Jerry
nuclear
Pumpkin
war.
Farm
And he
for
just
hooking it
had
up with
plenty of
the
nuclear
muscle rub here.
capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably
Menthol
thinks the
and
same thing
camphor.
about me. We
It's
have a
a,
different kind of relationship.
Full
We have a
spectrum,
very good
1500 milligram
relationship,
CBD
and
blend.
there's no war. And you
Super
know,
legit.
about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, "Oh, there's going to be trouble." I said, "No, they're not, because he's not going to do that." And I was right. Look, instead of being
I love
in a
the
war
point.
where millions of people, Seoul,
Killing
you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be
Okay.
dead right now.
President, that's 30 seconds. Thank you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear.
Are they doing the mic mute right now? Is that happening?
Why do you
Are they
think
doing that
we'll be
later?
able to rein
They're doing it?
in this
That might be
persistent
that's
threat
what
that
they're
is
Because I made
stopping.
it clear what's remaining
I don't know
clear
if they can stop it, but they
Threat.
can get
Maybe they
it.
know it's a threat.
They're like, I'm on the button.
Movie.
I'll do it.
They just point to their
I
eyes.
said, why are you moving your missile
Okay, well,
defense
they
up
had,
so
you know, like,
close? Why are you
Who-
moving more forces here?
What-
Why
who's-
do you continue to do
I don't know.
um,
Who's Joe Biden look at when he's not
military
talking?
maneuvers with South
He's like,
Korea?
he's got someone
I
in the
said,
crowd.
because
He's
North Korea is a problem, and
Yeah.
we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they are
I thought
much
we
more
weren't allowed to say
capable
thug.
I hate that
able to
word.
reach
Word.
U.S.
Is it thug
territory.
like no word?
I don't like the word hate, but
I feel like
I
someone
really
uses
don't
the word
like
malarkey.
like
I still use the word thug.
He's got clearance, I guess.
Under which you would meet with them.
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American
President,
families.
they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried
Delaware.
to meet with him.
Nuclear free
He wouldn't
zone. That's it.
do it.
Whole world, come to Delaware.
Obama, he didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I
I know
gotta
for a
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it. And that's okay. You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have to
leaders
move
of other
on, because we
countries
have a
is
lot
a
of,
good
we
thing.
have a lot of questions to get to.
Not
Your
that
response.
And we had a good relationship with Hitler before he in fact invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you. We're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And it
let's
didn't
move
happen.
on, let's
Excuse
move on
me.
to talk
He
about
left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do
They
need to move
left
on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And in
need to
fact,
move on
if you
to
remember the first
all
2
They
or 3
really,
months,
like-
it was a very dangerous
I'm gonna
period.
show
The
Age.
first 3
Anybody
months
remembers that
before
album
we
Banging on
started
Wax?
There was a very
Is what's happening in the
They
game
made
and the
a
debate
mess.
right
And
now.
Obama would be
Banging on Wax.
the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is healthcare, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and healthcare is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health
Rebuilding the kitchen.
insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn
That's what it was.
If the Supreme
It was
Court
a whole
does
Bloods and Crips
overturn that law, those Americans could
Past
lose
moment.
their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run
Got that
it, it's
too?
so good. What we like to do is terminate it.
He
We have the
started at my
individual
people,
mandate
great
done.
people.
I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better healthcare, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing.
Good question.
So I'd like
Do you
to
guys feel like
terminate
the last
Obamacare,
4
come
years
up
he's
with a
actually
brand new, beautiful healthcare. The
made the
Democrats will
reform in
do it because
healthcare
there'll
that
be
he's talking
tremendous
about?
pressure on them, and
Or made
we
the
might have
the
House
proper
by that
strides to
time.
reform
And I
healthcare?
think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better healthcare, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private healthcare, far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, President Biden asks for you, your healthcare plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Pass Obamacare with a public option, become Biden-care. Public option is an option that says that if you in
Come on,
fact
man, you could have
do
done better
not
on the
have
name.
wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that the competition that doesn't exist now, by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight for with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, make sure we're in a situation that about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people because of his handling of the COVID virus.
You gave that look.
Spillover. 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to
Does
something
anyone else
that
feel like Donald
President
Trump was just
Trump
staring
said,
back?
accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What
You
do
are
you say
pretty,
to
like,
people
eye-to-eye
who have
level with it right
concerns
now.
that your
Like,
health
he
care
did
plan, which
this.
includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a healthcare system run entirely by the government? What's your say to
It's
that?
ridiculous. It's like saying that,
Back on my donut, y'all.
we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between I think healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable healthcare. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? Because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone.
Can concur with that one.
We have to provide
I missed my registration for my
at an
job,
affordable rate. That's what I do.
and so I
President
just have
Trump,
insurance
He
for
was
the last
there for
year.
47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years.
And then
It's
got a
not
job.
like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine. Just like
Everybody wants it.
fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're
No,
gonna
dude,
stop fracking. Then he
stop
goes to
it. Stop it.
Pennsylvania.
You stop that.
We got very lucky to get it.
Fracking.
And he goes to Pennsylvania and he says, "Oh, we're going to have fracking." And you never
Why does
ask
he
that
keep
question.
saying
And
that?
I'm going to tell you right
I cannot
now, it's
do
going to be
it.
a fracking good time.
Somebody should ask the question. He goes for a year. There will be
We
a
have
fracking. There will
we have a number of topics.
No, but that's a
So
big-
we-
that's a big question.
We're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to
It's the same thing with socialized
You
medicine.
got to get on to the next fracking topic,
The
guys.
response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period.
You said that.
Period. And the
That's
Biden
3
care
periods.
proposal will
That's more like a dot, 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 like there's something else you got to say.
lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion.
Is it just me?
Years
Joe
to do it.
Biden looked like
And then
like Count
you get
Dracula.
Lower premiums, you can buy into the better
Your
plans,
that's an
the cheaper
eyebrows.
Like
plans.
when he comes up like this, it makes me
deal with
nervous.
Unexpected billing and have
Oh,
your
jeez.
drug prices
Scared me.
drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on healthcare. Not a thing.
Understand when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I wanna talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening
public
on
option,
Capitol Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine. And when he, and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroying, and destroying your Social Security. And this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay.
What are you guys'
Let's
thoughts
hear
on
from
social,
Vice President Biden.
socialized medicine?
He's a very confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagree with
Joe
them.
Biden.
Joe Biden he's running against.
He is talking in the third person right now.
Destroy Medicare?
He's serious. He's cracking serious.
If in fact, so
He's actually,
Cracking. Like,
Did
where's
you
that,
see- he
where's
even
that
clicked-
fly at though?
he clicked his pin twice, like Joe Biden.
Social Security will be bankrupt in by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who tried to cut Medicare. So no, I don't.
And I'm
know
about to
the
cut
idea
you.
that Donald Trump is like me
I
on
know.
Social Security and Medicare.
Come on. I was
He
that
tried
was-
to get rid of- he
Come
tried
on.
to hurt Social Security years ago.
Joe
Years
Biden.
ago. Go back and look at
That
the
was money.
records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right,
But the-
let's move
but
on.
this
I'm
is
gonna
the
move
guy
on.
that
Let
when
me,
they
Mr.
announced,
President, I have to move on to the next question.
they said
Or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
gonna have
will
time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Let's
I guess
move on
that's
to
what
the
she
next
said.
question,
No matters.
very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, that people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last
They live off the
three-
paper
3
companies.
years during this crisis.
If we learn anything from The
So,
Office.
the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars. Because
That's a lot of
that's his
Lucci.
only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on
401ks,
Capitol Hill. We're
Kristen,
gonna,
401ks are through the roof.
We're gonna move
Stock are
Bye,
through
Lori.
the roof.
all
And
right.
he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he
Okay,
could do
we're
it.
gonna move on to
And
the
he
next
left.
question.
The people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to
that.
my next question
They
for a minute.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work, and as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the
I haven't
president.
said anything
I
about
do,
voting.
but I still have to
I
get
don't
it.
think what,
Unfortunately,
though?
that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You
look.
know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why ain't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President.
We made it.
Yes,
deal.
Tina, I agree.
Let me ask Vice President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Oh, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion for local communities that have to balance their budget. The states have to balance their budgets, and then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers. So
We gotta get real about this, guys. It's gonna get weird.
He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go back.
Phillips, if you're still watching, dude, I'm sending you a link. I want you to join in.
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of billions and billions of dollars to these kids. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does...
Was that him?
What that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
If I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time for them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. Businesses as well as the schools need the help. But this, because these guys will not help them. It's not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
One thing
immigration,
very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to
said
get
we help small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state has to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen? What's been proven to happen is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour.
And I would consider it to an extent, but
in a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, every different places, I know different places, they're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15.
Okay, President Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be united?
children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through.
But how will you
let me
reunite these
just tell
kids
you-
with their
Just say,
Mr.
they
President?
built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages. And then they had a picture in a certain newspaper. And it was a picture of these horrible cages. And they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them. And then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you
They
have a
built
plan to
cages.
reunite the kids?
Yes, we're
with their
working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. They real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
They
to
did
that?
it. We changed.
did not.
They built the
separate
cages.
They,
Who built the
What are you
cages?
guys' thoughts on
Let's
that with
talk
ICE
about
right
what
now?
we're
What's happening
Let's
down the
talk about
borders?
what we're talking about. What happened? Parents,
Not just the borders either,
ripped
but the
their
things that
kids
are happening
ripped
in
from their
Georgia.
arms and separated.
Gee.
Kids alone, nowhere to go, nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say
it.
this,
in
they
10
went down, we
seconds and then
brought
I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of
I've
them
gotten
haven't been
such good-
reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
It made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they're going to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's legal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. This is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It
on.
just shows that he has no understanding of immigration of the laws.
And these are some of the
Catch and
cages that
release
they're
is a
talking about.
disaster.
No, I
A
can't pull
murderer would
quick
come
images
in.
too quick.
A rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in, we would take their name, we have to release them into our country, and then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them, we would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years, we're going to give you a court case. You did Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe.
Big shout out
they
Perry
never
Mason.
come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President
Very,
Trump, let's
very
give
clear.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You don't
next
know
section.
what, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
No, the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's.
But we don't have to worry about it. They
Check it out, guys. They both want you to check it out.
Let's
So
move on to the next
You have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and Brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for
we
no
just had a
reason
conversation
other
with a
than
woman the
color
other
of
day
their skin.
about this exact
Mr.
same
Vice
topic.
President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. What I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a Black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street, making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes sir, no sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are in fact the victim, whether you're a person making $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it. But we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the Black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they could never live that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the Black community than Donald Trump. And if you look,
What's
with
this
the
third
exception
Keep hearing
of
this third
Abraham
party
Lincoln,
speak.
possible
Every-
exception,
both
with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture. And everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the Black and Hispanic communities, and then historically Black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding. And I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them. And they like me and I like them. But I saved colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about your records. Your response to that, Vice
My
Mayor.
response to that
Give
is
that mute
I
button.
never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is the guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes that were suggested. Look, and talk about, granted, he did in fact, but 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should go to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now, you're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up. Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
Right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. No, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue.
laptop from him.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
please.
Because look, there are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
This
That's
where
exactly what.
This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia, Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. We go again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President, you've described the Black Lives Matter movement
That's the
as a
button.
symbol.
That's the button right there.
You've shared the video
They're
of
gonna
a
button
man
each
chanting
one of them.
white power to millions of supporters. You've said that Black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. He said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
What do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done, prison reform, and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's getting rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He's moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a farm.
You made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did
Abraham Lincoln.
Where did that? No. You said, I said, not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying,
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said, not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. You have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
oh,
tens of thousands of black men mostly in jail.
All right,
Sure.
let me
You know what?
ask
They
Vice
remember it because
President
if
Biden
you look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the vote right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that you
Biden
treated them
about.
very, very badly. Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
one of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money. That's why I set up drug courts, which are never funded by Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done because I think maybe the American people have now
to push that
it
button,
was a
guys.
mistake to pass those laws relating to drug, but they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along
Was
with
her claim to be like a
Obama as
non-politician?
I
president.
think so. We're gathering is that he's not.
Why did you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying
What he's
because
throwing out.
Interesting.
all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a lot of it done. We released
Get
38,000.
anything
We got 38,000 prisoners left from.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. We have
Choppy on
over
your
1,000 people who were given clemency.
Right.
We have, in fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing. So I can go on. But we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running, to win back that election and change this terrible policy.
I just asked,
His hand for a second there.
why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama.
Is it?
You know why, Joe? Because you're all
Can you
fault
see the trailers?
and no.
President Biden, then we're going to move on to the next section.
It's choppy.
In the
but it's
Republican
not
Congress. It's the answer.
Wait,
Okay.
you're going to talk them into it, Joe.
All right. We're going to move on to our next section.
Like I did
which
with criminal
climate
justice reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did.
we're running out of
All right.
time, so we gotta get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Green Grants program. We have
So I'm
some
gonna
of the
bring,
different programs. I do love the
someone on the stream here real
environment,
quick,
but one is the
and,
cleanest, crystal clear water. The
hopefully it'll
cleanest
work
air.
out. So if it
We
doesn't,
have
let me
the
guys
best,
let me know.
lowest
But
number in
Steve down in LA,
emissions, which is a national
school
asset.
teacher,
So Obama goes with all the time, not Joe,
and I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself here in a second. But I want to hear some of his thoughts on what
and
we're
the best
between
carbon emission
Joe Biden and
numbers
Donald
that we've
Trump.
had in 35 years under this administration.
Steve,
Whoa.
We are working so well.
CJ.
How you doing?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Filthy it is.
I'm doing great. I'm watching the debates. I've got my Team USA shirt on. Okay. Because I think that's the only team we should all be on.
The
Okay.
Paris Accord, I took us out.
What do you think?
I've got a glass of
What do you
a glass of Jim Beam, ready and loaded.
Very unfairly. When they put us in there,
And in the spirit of America,
they're going to take away our
I've got a water bottle I use on my cat.
sacrifice.
Anytime Donald Trump or Joe Biden say something I don't like, I just spray the TV.
Thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord.
See?
It was so
You stop that.
China doesn't
Trump.
kick in
Yes,
until
Trump.
2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we.
How are you doing tonight,
That
CJ?
way, it would have
Good, man. I'm
it
enjoying the
would
fact
have
that we'll
been
actually hear their thoughts on topics right now. The last debate, I watched the first one, not the last one, and it was a train wreck. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awful.
this is quite a bit better.
That we've seen in many, many years.
I appreciate how well spoken both candidates are.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you.
I do agree with Joe Biden that you shouldn't, in the greatest country in the world, you shouldn't go into the hospital sick and come out in bankruptcy.
We have a moral obligation
but-
to deal with it.
You know, I think both people have a lot to say.
Scientists of the world, we don't
And
have time.
I do like Trump's bronzer. It looks less orange.
Next
I feel like he's going with the Rachel Dolezal brown
eliminating
as
all
opposed to the.
A little bit.
by us to
It's nice, right?
to clean
As
up.
opposed to the normal mango Mussolini that I'm used to.
Will put us in a position where we're.
Well, you have a natural bronze to you, though, being
Here's
a
what we
ginger.
have great
Yes, yeah, it's a new movie coming out this fall. It's called 50 Shades of Red. Very disappointing. Nobody has a good time.
All 49, nobody likes.
Yeah, all 49.
We're going to invest in, for example.
I gotta double check your. You got an audio issue on your end. What do you use your phone?
China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to.
Ooh, was I muted? How about now?
Hundreds of millions of barrels in the process and creating significant number of jobs.
Testing. Testing.
And our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now,
Is it scratchy?
I'll take a crack at it later, okay?
2.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This
Later, player.
And not employment, just not economy.
President Trump.
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families. It's an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his president, you know, developed it, AOC +3. I mean, she got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate, and they're all hopping through hoops for AOC +3. Look,
Hopping through hoops.
had the best year in the history of our country.
I blame that game.
We would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this was This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it could be good. Ironically, they want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was. There was a lot of Lucci buildings with little, tiny, small windows. And many of them. Tiny, small windows.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more
I
questions.
don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers. Wait, 100.
I was going to say New York, I think is what he said.
This is planned endorsement for every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor. Because they know the future lies. Green. And they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is the electric and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer. Windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs. And they pay good prevailing wages.
With the judges.
$50 and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please respond to that.
We are energy independent for the first time. We had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We're energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive. Kills all the birds. And they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive that we're talking about with natural gas, which is virtually one of the things. Right. Solar, I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful enough yet to big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you're oil industry, you want, and what about fracking?
Well, we're back to frack. We're back to frack.
I oppose fracking.
Show that win superiority so far, and now we're in that frack off.
Lying.
Would you rule out fracking?
I do rule out
It's more time, guys. I'm gonna get Steve's water bottle.
industries to transition to get to only complete zero emissions by 2025. Sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it.
I have one more question in this podcast.
I was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking.
Oh, Drake.
The nomination. In Pennsylvania, he'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against fracking on
Oh,
federal
okay.
land. I said no fracking use, no oil on federal
Let
land.
me ask this final question. Then we move on to our final section.
These debates would have been amazing. Like for those that drink it, it's incredible.
Refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants are. The administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic or Black, or Asian, it's 9 times greater than 3 years. It was 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times. I know. I heard the numbers of the statistics. And I saved the beginning a number of money. It was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got zero relationship. We got Mexico and Russia to cut back way back. We saved that, and now it's very vital.
I'm working on it, guys. Give me a moment.
Your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both.
Just a moment.
Those people live on what they call, to understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute. Chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claremont, Delaware.
oil refineries and markets.
How we doing now?
Than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom got in the car, our first frost, driving slow through the windshield. That's why so many people in the state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it's not matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do you do? You put restrictions on the pollutions and the pollutants coming out of those frontline communities.
Okay, I have one final.
What is the oil industry? Would you close down the oil?
So much fiction, which is fear. We're going to choose to move forward because there are enormous opportunities. Enormous
Debate myself here for a second.
things better. We can deal with the system.
Does it sound better?
We can make sure that our economy is being run and motivated by clean energy, clean job. And that's